Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Event Hustler Show. My name is Liz King Caruso, and I have the honor every week of jumping on StreamYard here and sharing an interview or a talk on various social platforms with industry leaders. I have talked to some very interesting people and really excited for today's conversation with Lawrence Coburn from Twine. Lawrence, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Liz. I appreciate it.
Sure. I've loved your work over the years, paid a lot of attention to what you have been doing. And you and I got to catch up, I don't know, what was that, just a few weeks ago. Such a good conversation. So I thought I would bring you on. If you guys are watching live on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, you are more than welcome to join this conversation. It's going to be kind of like a casual catch up. I want to learn a little bit more about what he is working on. We'll talk about the industry. So if you guys have some comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat of whatever place you're watching, and we'll try to bring those into the conversation. But Lawrence, for people who might not know you, do you want to just kind of like kick it off with an intro to, you and whatever you want to share?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Lawrence Coburn. I'm an entrepreneur. I live in San Francisco. I have a wife and daughter. We live here together, and we're in the Mission District where we've been for 20 years. And so I've been an entrepreneur for like the last 22 years, which is kind of crazy. And coming out of grad school, I started my first company, drove out to San Francisco. That was kind of a long slog, like a 12-year slog. We didn't raise a lot of money. We learned a lot. We ended up selling the business, so it was pretty good. In 2010, I founded a company called DoubleDutch. I co-founded a company called DoubleDutch. And it was our first sort of play in event technology. And we didn't know anything about events other than having been event attendees. And so it was a big learning curve for us. But we became one of the leaders in mobile event apps. We had a 9-year run. We ended up getting acquired by Cvent in 2019, I guess. And then I took a little bit of time off after that acquisition. It was a pretty intense run at DoubleDutch. I think at one point we were the third fastest growing company in the world behind Slack and Zenefits. And it was crazy. Just like, we raised $90 million. We hired a lot of people. It was like offices all over the world, a lot of travel, a lot of events. And it was pretty exhausting. And by the end of that, I was pretty beat up. Like my shoulder, I couldn't lift my arm. It was all stress, right?
Yeah.
So I took a couple months off and couldn't stop thinking about this thing, which would become Twine, which was how can we use software to kind of recreate the magic of serendipity when you meet someone unexpectedly and you have a great conversation, you have a great connection. And how can software kind of increase the odds that those things are going to happen at events? And so that's what Twine is. It's basically a networking module for virtual events initially, but soon hybrid and in-person events too. And that's all we do. And so we look to plug into whatever event tech you're using, and it's really fun. And hopefully you all will get a chance to try it someday.
So, I mean, what a run. You and I have been kind of in the industry for about the same amount of time. I started my company about 10 years ago, and the industry has dramatically changed. Event tech has dramatically changed. I was really excited to watch all the DoubleDutch growth. I loved what you guys were doing, and so excited that you guys got to sell out. That's, always a dream for a lot of companies. So just tell me what you're seeing, especially over the course of the last year in the industry and event tech. I mean, it's an exciting time. I know for the events industry, it's an uncertain time, but in technology, I mean, is this better? Could it have been better in the last 10 years, or what's your perspective?
Yeah, so I think this is the moment, right? So our industry has run pretty much the same way for 1,000 years, I think. I mean, I actually don't think that's an exaggeration. Like, you have a venue, you attract a bunch of people with the similar interests. Maybe there's some buying and selling, maybe there's some learning, maybe there's some networking. There's probably a bar, and the thing happens for a couple of days, and business gets accelerated, and there's nothing like a live event. And so I know when I was starting DoubleDutch, it was all about how can we get event owners to appreciate the power of software in making this great experience even better. And we were kind of up against it, right? Because the thing is, without software, events work really well. So there was no real burning desire to really integrate tech into the experience. And so it turned into, like, a lot of times we would pitch all this incredible capability to a very busy event planner, and the event planner would say, sure, let's use DoubleDutch event app, but they wouldn't deploy all the cool stuff because they knew what they knew, and their methods worked, and it's been working for hundreds, if not 1,000 years. And we got that. We understood that.
Yeah.
But what's happened with COVID is that suddenly there is no event unless you want to go deep on tech. And that's the moment. And so what our whole industry is getting is a crash course in the power of software to deliver ROI, to deliver content, deliver getting business done, to accelerate business in general. And so we're going to all get past this thing. We're all going to get vaccinated. The virus is going to go away. And as event owners and event planners, we're going to have options. Like, do we want to spin up an in-person event? Do we want to spin up a virtual event? And we are going to be highly skilled in both. And that's going to be exciting. And that's why I think that events as an industry is going to grow 10x when this thing is all said and done. And if you follow that through, there's investors thinking the same way, which is why you see all the money pouring into companies like Bizzabo and Hopin. So this is an exciting time. And I hope the folks out there, even the ones that are going through pain, realize how important our work as an industry is going to be for the world over the next couple of years.
And even if you look at like virtual events, and especially as we look towards hybrid, it's the number of roles, even just for a single event, how many people you need to work on a hybrid event is dramatically different than what we used to need. So even though I know a lot of people in our industry are out of work or are kind of in between trying to figure out when they can get back to in-person, it's exciting future. There's a lot coming. Now, you've got all this experience in technology, wide range. I mean, DoubleDutch was not just a mobile app. There was a lot of gamification. There were a lot of things. Now you've decided to kind of focus in on networking. And I think that's one of the things, as people have gone primarily virtual at this point, that everyone misses. It's like nothing can replace the handshakes and the hugs. Everyone misses the serendipitous connections. Why did you decide to kind of hone in on this area and tell people a little bit more about Twine so they know what exactly you guys are doing?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of reasons, and I'll start with sort of the negative, pessimistic view, and I'll share something a little personal. And I hope none of the former Double Dutchers take this the wrong way, but when we launched Double Dutch, I loved our app. I adored it. It was so simple and clean, and our big insight about the world was that events were kind of like social networks. They were ephemeral social graphs where for 3 days, like, the people around you at that event were the center of your world.
Yeah.
And so we modeled our software like that. We had profiles and feeds and messaging. So all the things you would expect in a social network. And I loved it. But flash forward to 2019, and we had gotten so big and we had built so many custom features for customers in all kinds of industries that just needed to have this one obscure thing, that the thing had gotten really bloated. And we were doing a lot of things in that app that I didn't know that much about, and we weren't experts in, and the whole thing had just kind of lost a little bit of its magic, in my opinion. And so I'm going to try very hard not to do that. I'm going to try very hard with Twine to focus on the thing that really moves me and moves the founding team, which is serendipity. And so there's a lot going on here. I think one way to look at this as a metaphor is that as events have moved online, event owners and planners have done a wonderful job bringing the keynotes and the breakout rooms and the education online. We know how to do that. It's a webinar, right? Like you stream your content, you allow people to tap in. Maybe there's some chat in the sidebar, but that has gone beautifully. What hasn't moved online, so consider that like the Salon A at the hotel, right? Like we've moved Salon A online, but what we haven't been able to move online is the bar, the hallways, the collisions as you're walking in through registration, and all those sort of magic serendipitous moments. And I've always felt that software should be able to help more with this, and no one is really focused just on that problem. And so that's what we're going to do. And there's one other sort of personal kind of angle here, which is I've always been sort of an awkward introvert. If you've seen me in real life, like, I'm too tall, I'm kind of hunched over. I'm like, and it's like networking has always been very hard for me. I cradle my beer. I'm like physically in distress. And when
I
I'm
know exactly how that feels.
See, so there's a lot of us out there, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm somehow magically get dropped into a good conversation, all that sort of dissipates and goes away, and it's electric and it's amazing.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get talking to the sales guy that's trying to sell me something I don't need, and I can't get away, and I don't know how to escape that. And so I've always felt that software should be able to de-risk those things for me, like help guide me to talk to the right person and help guide me so I don't get stuck talking about the weather in Las Vegas, and help guide me so when it's time to move on to the next conversation, we can exit gracefully. And so when you try Twine, you'll notice all of these crutches that we built in to help people like me that like the idea of networking, but find it physically very challenging. So yeah.
Yeah. So this makes me think, I've noticed that you are very active on Clubhouse. And one of the things I like about Clubhouse, and I know everyone's talking about Clubhouse right now, is there's, so many conversations happening at once. You can like click into anything and they have that little peace out, leave quietly button, which as an introvert, I wish they had for in-person events. It's like, I wish there was a way to just kind of be like, okay, I'm done. I like to move. So how does it work? And where do you think, how are you facilitating these serendipitous connections? Because I know a lot of planners are very interested in this part.
Yeah, so we got to talk about Clubhouse, and I can talk about
I know.
talk about some of the different. So why don't we start with Clubhouse? Because I think it's really cool. I think they've stumbled onto something, and the founder is like he's a pro. Like he founded a company called Highlight a couple years ago, which was one of my favorites. It was like a modern Foursquare. So like, how can you serendipitously know who's around you? So he's been sort of chipping away at this problem for a long time. And they do a lot of subtle and good things around incentives and reputation. It's just a very thoughtfully done product. But for those that don't know what it is, like imagine an unconference where, as opposed to having speakers that you sign up before and then attendees go sign up for these sessions, imagine that anybody can be a speaker. So on Clubhouse, there's this concept of creating a room. So you create a room, it's audio only, and there's a handful of sort of speaker tools where you can invite people up on stage and these kinds of things. And anybody can create a room. And what's happening is attendees are voting with their feet. And so you try and amass followers so that when you create a room as a speaker, a notification goes out. It's all iPhone. So the notifications are really aggressive to all of your followers saying, hey, Liz and Lawrence just opened up a room to talk about event tech. And then suddenly you have all these people jumping on into your room. And as the speaker, you can bring people up onto the stage and you can talk about this thing. And it's really fun and exciting to see the diversity of topics that have exploded there. And so as I think about Clubhouse, I think about a couple of things. The first thing is that this is a pandemic native service. So it's a service that was built for virtual only. And so it's a format. I think one of the things that maybe we struggle on as planners is like we try and bring the thing that used to happen face to face onto digital, and we just try and port it over. And that's not a bad place to start. But Clubhouse didn't do that. They started with an experience that could only happen virtually, this audio only kind of thing. And so that's the first thing. I think that's the first message for planners is let's think about how do we embrace this new medium of digital, as opposed to saying, how do we bring the expo floor online? Let's talk about what an expo floor should look like that would only ever existed digital. Mm-hmm. So that's one cool thing. The other thing that I'm tracking with Clubhouse is what is their revenue model going to be? Is it going to be like Cvent, where they sell this room technology into events? Is it going to be around creators? So they try and attract thought leaders like Liz to bring their communities on and then allow tipping, allow ticket sales? Is it more like Eventbrite or is it more like Cvent? But one thing I do fundamentally believe is that Clubhouse is a virtual event platform. And they may call themselves different kinds of things, but it is events. And if you are an event planner that is thinking about the next chapter, you should get on there and see what they're doing, and you will get ideas. So hit me up. I have some invites. I don't have unlimited invites, but hit me up on LinkedIn if you don't have an invite yet and you want to get one. If
you're, iOS.
iOS only for now. Yeah.
So you're a big fan. I mean, I can tell because you're always on it. For an introvert like me, I've been kind of like with any social network, I feel like I want to get in, figure out what everyone's doing. I do a lot of watching in the beginning. I did a little bit of hosting just to kind of see what that piece was like. And I love the unconference like metaphor that you use, because that's exactly what it is. You know, anyone can get on stage and start being the thought leader and can share anything that they want. And obviously there's a little bit of curation. I think it's super interesting. And then, you know, those connections are very serendipitous, and they've really done a pretty good job so far. I think any social network is going to have trouble in the future, but with, you know, making it's, you know, it's, most people have to be kind of like invited by someone. There's some kind of like tie there. So I've heard that if you invited me and I start, you know, spamming people, then we both get kicked off. So there's a little bit of kind of legacy there, and they've done a good job not making it too marketing heavy. So that's really interesting, some of the parallels that you made to the events industry.
Yeah, there's one gesture I really like where if I invite you to join Clubhouse, which is the only way you can get in is somebody invites you, my name will be on your profile forever. It's kind of like I own you, but it's also kind of like I'm responsible for you. So if you come on and you're a jerk, like, oh man, who's this guy Lawrence that brought this jerk onto our like nice little community platform? So they do so many subtle little thoughtful things around reputation incentives, and so it's a lesson in how to build a social media property, actually.
Yeah.
But I should tell you a little bit about Twine and sort of
I was just about to
diverted. So Twine, there's a couple of inspirations for Twine. So one is my co-founder, Diana, she, over her life, she's hosted hundreds of these, what she calls Jeffersonian dinners. And they are highly choreographed things where she scripts out a bunch of conversation starters, almost like those decks of deep topics that you can play to have conversations. And so that's one inspiration, is how do we take this idea of a structured Jeffersonian dinner online around deep topics that steer you into the deep end. Some other sort of kind of inspirations. There was a company called Chat Roulette from probably about 10 years ago. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was kind of this magical thing. For me, it reminded me very much of like the first time I used Napster, when it was like, holy smokes, like every song in the world is out there and I can listen to any song at any moment. For me, Chat Roulette was like, oh my God, there's a whole world of people connected to the internet and I can kind of browse them. And for those of you that don't know the story of Chat Roulette, it was basically this wild web-based service where you could tap a button and be connected to someone else on the internet and have a conversation. And I remember in the early days, I tapped the button and I was connected to Ben Folds in Brooklyn, New York, who was one of my favorite music artists. And like, he's playing the piano. I was like, oh my God, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Some of you might know how that story ended, where it got ruined by men behaving badly. So they didn't have any of this invite only stuff, and men started to get very aggressive and it became really gross. And so getting back to Twine, the core methodology of Twine is you tap a button, you get connected magically by our algorithm to someone else in that pool of people from your event. And there's a question overlay of a conversation starter, and you can cycle through those questions, and there's a countdown clock. And between those little gestures, we're guiding you to have a meaningful, impactful conversation and to accelerate the pace of which you get to know someone. And then we give you tools afterwards to help stay in touch. Like you can send a business card, you can connect on LinkedIn, you can send a video message with a question card attached. So it's really simple, but our hope is that it fills a need.
And then there's kind of a second piece to that, which I did see the demo, so I'm kind of jumping ahead. But then at the end, you kind of get a list of everyone that you met with, right? In case you wanted to kind of go deeper.
Yeah, you start to collect a graph. And if you, if you play this thing out, we want people to value their Twine network. So as you start to go to multiple events, and the events are all using Twine, you start to have almost like a LinkedIn where you actually know your connections, right? And so that's part of the investor pitch. Is long term, this might be a backdoor way to start to build out a really clean professional graph.
Very interesting. So David Jennings said that Chat Roulette is still going. It's still wild. I had no idea.
They are, and they're coming back. And so the thing about the pandemic is that it's pushed tailwinds into a lot of these sort of serendipity services, because guess the thing that's been taken away from all of us is like, we're just not meeting new people anymore. And we're thirsty for that. I think we're all human social animals. So they are coming back. It's a good point.
Cameron wants to know if I ever used it, and the answer is no. I just know about it. So I love what you guys are doing. Tell me what you are most excited about as we look to 2021. I mean, 2020 was kind of wild ride, but we have the world in front of us. So what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, as a human, roaring 20s, here we go. I think I grew up in the Northeast in Philadelphia, and winter would come and it would be horrible. And then spring would come and people would be running out of their houses like, yes, let's go to the Jersey Shore. And like everyone's happy and excited. And I think we're going to be in for a couple of years of that. And I can't wait. Like live music, playing basketball in the park, like all, like, you know, my daughter going to soccer games, like all those things that have been taken away. So there's that. On the industry side, man, I think we all have so much to look forward to, and I think it's that we're going to have choice. Like we are going to have the ability to spin up virtual events at quick notice on any topic and use all these incredible tools that are coming out of Silicon Valley and elsewhere around remote collaboration and all that stuff. So there's going to be better tools, more attendee education around how to participate and how easy it is to drop one of these in. Like all events are connected to the internet, but then we're also going to have the ability to spin up what we know best, which are these in-person events. So I think we're going to see tremendous demand, wonderful tools, and I think anybody can explode their career over the next 3 to 5 years because the demand is there. It's a rising tide.
Yeah, I completely agree. And one of the things that excites me so much is that I think all of this access to virtual really pushes a lot of the content there. And so I do believe that, you know, for example, everyone's saying that personal travel, leisure travel will come back before business travel. It's so much, especially, I mean, in my own family, we barely see my parents live an hour from here. My sister lives an hour, my brother, we barely see them because of the pandemic. So I think that it has really emphasized this need for meaningful relationships, not just that people want to go out and willy-nilly meet strangers all the time. But I do think that event organizers are going to see a really big push towards that networking, not just only as, you know, in the hallways and like you were talking about, but as a main focus where the content you're kind of accessing all year round with the brand through tons of virtual stuff.
That's such a subtle and good point. I've always thought that, you know, I was taught when I entered the event industry that the 3 pillars of why events exist are like to learn, to get business done, and to network. And to me, what the pandemic has showed us that you can sort of learn on your own time. Like I can watch the keynote live or I can watch it on recorded, like when it's convenient for me. That sounds like a pretty good option. You know, it used to be that you couldn't get deals done, enterprise deals, without getting on a plane and pitching face to face, but deals are getting done over Zoom and it can happen. But the networking part, that feels like as an industry, our fundamental value prop to the world is we bring people together and accelerate relationships. So I agree with that. I think we're going to see, and there's another piece here. Like at DoubleDutch, we always used to talk about the dream of the 365-day event, right? The events that expand into communities, and community is really hot. Events are really hot. The lines are blurring between webinars and events and meetings and communities, and like so. It's a big, wide open mess right now, but in a wonderful way. I think the world is figuring out what the lanes are for the next couple of years.
Now, I totally agree about the year-round events, and we're already seeing it. We have a client, for example, who charges an annual, you know, it's a one-time fee for their annual conference. This year they went virtual, so it's the same price for their ticket, but it includes year-round membership. And so they're doing content all year round. So I completely see that is already happening. One of the things that I wanted to ask your opinion about, and of course I didn't warn you about this at all, but in addition to this greater interest in connection, one of the other things that I'm seeing is kind of a pull from, and nothing against them in particular, but Facebook, you know, some of these bigger social networks where they're taking all your data. You are not the consumer. We've had this conversation a billion times. And so I am curious whether more places like Clubhouse or maybe even Twine could charge a fee for their services to be completely private and to be not about your data and not about advertising, but to really be about genuine connections. And I'm really wondering if there's like enough of a demand for that building. What do you think about that?
Yeah, you know, when we first launched Twine, one of our thoughts was to be a consumer service where it's member supported and you pay for the right to be part of this community and consistently meet new and amazing people.
Yeah.
And I think the opportunity is there for someone who knows what they're doing on the consumer social side to do that. Clubhouse is sort of doing that, kind of invite only, no ads for now. It doesn't sound like they're talking about adding ads. And I think that moment when you add advertisers to your service, it sort of changes things. And even if you don't want to be a bad person, you might get pulled in different ways. We're seeing that with Facebook a little bit. So I think that opportunity is wide open. I know from an investor perspective, they are looking at consumer social properties for the first time in about 8 years because there is this belief that there's thirst for a new kind of social experience.
Yeah, I think I did hear that Clubhouse was thinking of doing some kind of tip kind of service. So it's something that the consumers are, I like this. I believe in the group that Lawrence has been running. I want to like contribute to that. I would be really curious to see if that's something they end up rolling out from a monetization standpoint.
Yeah, there's another whole giant wave of this sort of creator economy. And Liz, you're a creator, right? Like you create content and you have followers and people know who you are and they want to hear what you have to say. And then you are starting to bring your community together. But this whole creator ecosystem, you can see it in services like TikTok. You can see it in services like Cameo. You can see it in services like OnlyFans. There's like a number of tools. Like imagine if we were all our own company, right? And we were creating content and we were making videos and we're pushing out products. And there's a bunch of tools coming out for people like that are companies of one. And the success stories are getting out there, like that. Some of these YouTube and TikTok stars making millions of dollars. And
it's crazy.
It's exciting. It's exciting.
It's that kid, Ryan's World. I'm sure you've seen that if you have a daughter. He's like 10 or something. He's a millionaire. He makes so much money off his YouTube channel.
Mr. Beast like spun up a 300 restaurant chain over a weekend with one item, a burger, and pushed it out to his social channels and sold out on burgers. So it's like it's a whole new world we're living in.
It's so crazy. I want people to learn more about Twine, which is obviously why I have you on here. If people are interested in learning more, or they want to connect with you and learn more about your genius around event tech landscape, what are some of the places where people can find you? And obviously we'll put the links in our blog recap, but while people
so I'm not a big pitch person. I like to just talk shop, but like, thank you for mentioning that. So it's twine.nyc. It's free for up to 30 users. So if you wanted to go in and spin up your own sort of networking chat roulette-like experience and create your own questions, you can do that for up to 30 people. There's a demo video on twine.nyc that you can watch that I think will show like sort of the magic of the experience. And then I'm pretty visible. So find me on Twitter, find me on LinkedIn, find me on Clubhouse, and just ping me if you want to talk about it. And I'm happy to share where we're going.
Yeah, I think we'll have to have a TECHSYTALK Twine meetup and see how it runs for our group as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And the way it would work is we would literally just drop a link into the chat, and then we would all bounce over there and be put into this roulette style. Like it's super easy. So yeah, let's do that next time. That'd be fun.
I think I want to use this technology for clients too. Just like keep it fast. It makes people, get to the point, move along. You never know.
Yeah, we've thought about kind of manager one-on-ones, candidate interviews. Like anytime there's a one-to-one, a little bit of structure can help, like a countdown clock and a topic. And so it's cool.
And I think it's good for extroverts and introverts, for the introverts to have like the question to kind of like lead into something, but also the time, I think, for extroverts to kind of give them to say, all right, I'm diving in. This is what I want to do. And also for, like you mentioned, super salesy people, it's like, no one has time to get into the whole pitch, which is great.
That is great.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. I know I'm not the only one who enjoyed it. For those of you who are watching live, thank you for your comments. And of course, we will be sharing the recording of this on SoundCloud and on our blog and any social place that we can possibly push it. Lawrence, thank you so much for your time today. It was a great time catching up.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you next week for another episode of the Event Hustler Show. Next week, we're going to be talking to the owner of The Sketch Effect, all about visual illustrations and how that plays a role in our events. So check us out and be sure to subscribe so you can catch all of our episodes. Thanks, everyone.